Right now, at this very second, your mind is doing something exhausting, and you probably don't even realize it. It's replaying a conversation you had 3 days ago. It's rehearsing what you're going to say tomorrow in a meeting that might not even happen. It's analyzing whether that person's text message meant something deeper than the words on the screen. And here's what nobody tells you. The tiredness you feel at the end of every day isn't coming from your work. It isn't coming from your busy schedule. It's coming from the non-stop thinking about your life instead of actually living it. But what if I told you that 8 ancient Buddhist stories, some of them over 2,000 years old, could show you exactly where your mind keeps trapping you, and more importantly, how to break free? And I'm not talking about positive thinking tricks or mental hacks you forget by next week. I'm talking about deep recognition. Seeing something so clearly that it changes you from the inside out. One of these stories is about a man who wandered for years in total poverty, begging for food and sleeping in doorways, while carrying a priceless jewel sewn into his own clothes without knowing it. Another is about a student that everyone called hopeless and stupid, who became one of the greatest enlightened masters through the simplest practice you can imagine. And there's a story about a small animal who faced a burning fire with such calm and courage that even the king of the gods was left speechless. These aren't cute little fables. They're mirrors, and when you look into them honestly, you're going to see yourself. You're going to recognize patterns you've been stuck in for years, and by the time we reach the end, something will have shifted inside you. Not because you learned a new trick, but because you finally saw what was always there before all that thinking even started. And real quick, if you're someone who's been searching for more peace and clarity in your life, take 1 second and hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. It genuinely helps more people find these teachings, and I promise you, staying on this journey is going to be worth every minute. So let's start with the story that might hit you the hardest. There was a man who left home young, full of dreams about making something of himself. He believed that somewhere out there success and happiness were waiting for him if he just worked hard enough and searched long enough. But years went by and nothing came together the way he hoped. He took whatever small jobs he could find, hauling grain, fixing walls, doing labor that barely paid enough to eat. Some nights he slept on the streets because he couldn't afford a room. And every single day he watched other men his age walk by in nice clothes, doing important things, looking like they had it all figured out. And every single day he asked himself the same painful question: what do they have that I don't? He measured himself constantly. Am I smart enough? Am I talented enough? Am I worthy enough to matter? The questions never stopped and the answers never satisfied him. One evening, broken down and starving, he found himself in a city where an old friend lived. This friend had become wealthy and successful. The poor man almost didn't knock on the door because the shame of showing up in rags felt unbearable. But he had nowhere else to go. When the wealthy friend opened the door, there was no judgment, just pure joy. He pulled the poor man inside, ordered a feast, and they laughed and talked like they were kids again. The first time in years, the poor man felt like a human being. The warmth, the food, the safety, it all overwhelmed him. He fell asleep right there at the table. While his friend slept, the wealthy man did something extraordinary. He went to his treasury, selected a jewel worth more than most people earn in a lifetime, and quietly sewed it deep into the lining of his sleeping friend's robe. He stitched it carefully so it wouldn't be noticed but would travel with him everywhere he went. The poor man woke up the next morning, thanked his friend, and left. He went right back to wandering, right back to begging, right back to measuring his worth against everyone around him. Years passed. He walked through 100 cities carrying that jewel against his skin and never once knew it was there. He stood in lines waiting for work while wearing a fortune. He counted pennies for food while a priceless gem rested in his hem. He told himself he was worthless while literally carrying treasure. Years later, by pure chance, the two friends crossed paths again. The wealthy friend saw him still living in poverty and couldn't believe it. He grabbed the poor man's robe, found the hidden stitching, pulled it open, and revealed the jewel. "You've been carrying this the entire time," he said. "Every night you slept on the ground, every moment you thought yourself worthless, this was right here with you." The poor man held that jewel in shaking hands, and something broke open inside him. He hadn't been poor at all, not for years. He just couldn't see what he already had. This story comes from the Lotus Sutra, one of the most important texts in Buddhism, and the jewel represents something called Buddha nature, the idea that every single person already carries within them the full capacity for awakening, for peace, for freedom, not as something you need to earn or develop, as something already present, right now, just waiting to be seen. Think about how much energy you spend measuring yourself. Am I good enough at my job? Am I attractive enough? Am I successful enough to justify taking up space in this world? All that measuring, all that comparing, and it never actually settles the question, does it? Every achievement just creates a need for another achievement. Every validation expires and needs to be renewed. The measuring never ends because it's trying to solve the wrong problem. You don't need to prove your worth. You need to recognize the jewel you've been carrying all along. Now let me tell you about someone whose mind worked differently than everyone expected. There was a young monk named Chulapanthaka, whose brother was a brilliant scholar. But Chulapanthaka couldn't memorize anything. His brother would teach him a simple verse, just 4 lines, and he'd repeat it over and over. But the moment someone asked him to recite it back, the words vanished completely from his mind. Like water poured into sand, the other monks laughed at him. Some felt sorry for him. Most thought he was simply too stupid for spiritual life. Eventually his own brother told him to leave. "You're not cut out for this," he said. "Go back to ordinary life where these things don't matter." Chulapanthaka was walking toward the gate, crushed and humiliated, when the Buddha himself stopped him. The Buddha didn't give him a harder teaching or a better memorization technique. He handed him a simple white cloth and said, "Rub this cloth and repeat these 2 words, removing impurity. That's it. Don't analyze it. Don't question it. Just do it." So Chulapanthaka sat in a corner rubbing that cloth while other monks studied complex philosophy. Days went by. The monks smirked at him, but something was happening. The cloth that started pure white was slowly turning grey from the natural oils and dust on his hands. And one day, looking at that dirty cloth, Chulapanthaka's mind cracked wide open. If impurity can accumulate on something clean, then impurity isn't permanent. It can be removed. His mind wasn't permanently broken. The confusion and shame had just accumulated through years of harsh words and failure. And what accumulates can be washed away. In that moment, he achieved what the greatest scholars in the monastery hadn't: complete awakening. The monk everyone called hopeless became enlightened through the simplest practice imaginable. The Buddha later declared him one of his greatest disciples. Not despite his limitations, but because he found a door that matched how his mind actually worked. How much time do you spend analyzing whether you're capable enough before you even start? How many things have you avoided because you decided in advance that you weren't smart enough, talented enough, ready enough? Chulapanthaka's story shows that the overthinking itself is what blocks you. He didn't think his way to freedom. He practiced his way there. Simple, consistent, without stopping to evaluate whether it was working. And that brings me to something urgent. There's a teaching where the Buddha asked his monks to imagine the entire earth covered by one vast ocean. Somewhere on that ocean, a single wooden ring floats randomly, blown by the wind in every direction. Now imagine a blind sea turtle living in the depths of this ocean. This turtle comes up for air only once every 100 years, just 1 breath per century. The Buddha asked, what are the chances that this blind turtle, surfacing randomly once in 100 years, would put its head through that single ring drifting on an ocean covering the entire planet? The monk said it was virtually impossible. And the Buddha said, being born as a human being with the capacity to understand these teachings is even rarer than that. Let that sink in. You are that turtle. And somehow, against impossible odds, you surfaced exactly where the ring was floating. You have a mind that can think, that can choose, that can practice, that can wake up. And what do most of us do with this miracle? We complain that our coffee isn't hot enough. We rage because someone cut us off in traffic. We scroll through our phones comparing our lives to strangers on the internet. We treat this impossibly rare existence like a burden instead of recognizing it as the greatest gift imaginable. This doesn't mean your problems aren't real. It means your problems exist within something extraordinary. You're standing on a miracle and complaining about the view. There's also a story about a hare who made a vow to practice complete generosity. When a hungry traveler came asking for food, the hare had nothing to offer except himself. No fish, no fruit, just grass that wouldn't satisfy anyone. So the hare asked the traveler to build a fire and said he would leap into it to offer his own body as a meal. The traveler was actually the king of the gods in disguise, testing whether this small creature's generosity was real. The hare didn't calculate the odds, didn't rehearse escape plans, didn't overthink whether this was wise. He shook his fur to make sure no tiny insects would be harmed, and he jumped. The fire was cool. The king of the gods had made it harmless. But the hare didn't know that when he leaped, he jumped believing it would burn. And that's the teaching. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action despite fear. When the action aligns with your deepest values. How many fires are you standing in front of right now, calculating instead of leaping? The honest conversation you keep postponing, the career change you've analyzed to death, the creative dream you shelved until conditions are perfect, the risk you know in your heart is worth taking. The calculation never finishes because fear is endlessly creative. It will always find one more reason to wait. And that connects to the story of the man who saw a boat arrive that could carry him to the shore of freedom. He'd waited for this boat his whole life, but instead of boarding, he decided to eat breakfast first. Then he took a nap because he was tired. Then he waited for the heat to pass. Then he waited for the heat to pass. Then he repacked his bag. Then he secured his house. And when he finally rushed to the dock, the boat was gone. A fisherman standing nearby told him the next boat might come in a year, or never. The man spent the rest of his life staring across that water at the freedom he'd traded for breakfast. Every delay you make sounds reasonable on its own. I'll start meditating when work calms down. I'll commit to change after this project ends. I'll focus on what matters when the timing is better. But work never calms down. Projects never truly end. Timing never becomes perfect. And the boat leaves while you're optimizing conditions that don't need optimizing. All of these stories point to one powerful truth that a queen named Shramala proclaimed fearlessly before an entire assembly of monks and scholars. She said every single being carries within them the essence of awakening. It may be hidden by confusion, by anger, by years of self-doubt, but it is never destroyed. Just like a priceless jewel covered in dust is still priceless. Your true nature beneath all the overthinking is already complete, already free, already whole. You don't need to become worthy. You already are. You don't need to think your way to peace. Peace exists before thinking begins. You don't need to earn what you were born carrying. You just need to stop searching long enough to finally see it. The jewel is already in your robe. The ring is already beneath your feet. The fire you're afraid of might be cool when you finally leap. And the boat is at the dock right now, in this moment, waiting for you to stop making breakfast and board. So here's what I want you to do. Don't just let this wash over you and move on to the next video. Pick the one story that hit you the hardest. The one where you thought, that's me. Sit with it today. Let it work on you. Let it show you where your mind has been trapping you, and how simple it actually is to step free. If this reached something real inside you, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Buddhism Focus for more videos like this one. We share these timeless teachings every single day to help you live with more peace, more courage, and more clarity. Share this with someone you love who needs to hear it, because sometimes one message at exactly the right moment can change everything. The lion has roared. You've always been the jewel. Now stop searching and see what was always there. Take care of yourself and walk gently through this beautiful, impossibly rare life you've been given.